So, hi, Fred. Wonderful to see you again. It's been, about 6 months or so since we had finished our last coaching engagement. And please introduce yourself.
Well, yep, great to see you again too, Meg. It's been a lot of years, and you're always smiling when we come on the call, so it's great. So I'm Fred Feistmann, up here in Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada, and spent the last 24 or so years building a wealth management practice and a team and working with people. And prior to that, had a little bit of experience in agriculture and engineering. Specifically, spent about a decade as a cowboy, and prior to that, a little bit of mechanical engineering. So just bringing a wide range of thinking to the GTD experience I've had.
And how did you first find GTD? Because you and I were just kind of talking before we hit the record. And I first started working with you in 2017. But what was your exposure before that?
I was gifted the original Getting Things Done book. So that would have been probably, I'm going to guess, early 2000, mid 2000s. So I was familiar with the material, and when I read I'm an avid reader. So when I read the book, it just clicked that this was something that was going to be powerful for me. So I instituted, the language, a lot of the language, like next action, became part of the lexicon immediately, and a few other things, and just fumbled my way through that for a number of years until I realized that I needed to have somebody help me take it to the next level.
And when I started working with you, I also was really fortunate to be able to work with your team at the same time. And are some of them still there? I was originally working with 3. Yeah, that really says something, because tell me what drew you to not only install and implement and integrate it yourself, but wanting to have your team do it, because you also had some goals outside of your work in terms of where you wanted your team to be so that you could focus on some what next for you. And I'd love you to kind of expand on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, there's a certain, when it comes to having a team, I think everybody needs to be on the same page. And part of being on the same page is being able to communicate like a well-oiled machine. And so communication in our team has always been something that makes us different amongst others. We're not siloed. We're very collaborative. And so when it comes to GTD, what was becoming apparent through my period with it is the productivity that I was producing was something that the team, there'll always be some productivity off to the side, like you were saying, that's got nothing to do with the team, which I wanted to aspire to. However, within the team, if I am talking a certain language and working a certain way and at a certain pace, and the team doesn't really isn't aligned with that, then it doesn't work for anybody. Like they were getting quite frustrated, perhaps. And then, of course, I would be too. So bringing you in to help everybody understand how this all could work and we could integrate and still give them the ability to build their own system in their own way, but at the top level, we could all comment on things in the same way was super powerful.
And what was also so wonderful, and you and I had talked about this beforehand, is that for the last 20 something years, before anybody starts the coaching, they take the Kairos assessment.
Yes.
And what was again, what I love about bringing the Kairos assessment, which is understanding people's cognitive preferences, it allows me, when I was working with the 4 of you simultaneously, it's like, okay, we're going to set Fred up. Now, we co-create it, but Fred's going to go this way. I won't name names. This person's going to go this way. This person's going to go this way. This person's going to go this way. Because you had 2 people with the same preference. I'm just looking down. You had it all. You had the associative preference, you had the sequential preference, and you had the ambidextrous preference. And we will add a link to the Kairos assessment so people can explore that a little bit more. So it's kind of like you had this whole, it's kind of like analogous to handedness. You know, there are lefties and there's righties and there's people that are ambidextrous. And you had all of it with your team. And what was so great was I was able to really individualize it for everybody, right? People were using different tools. You know, people were doing their weekly reviews differently or clarifying and organizing. And at the same time, you all had, as you shared, this common language and framework. But everybody got to customize it to make it really work for them, which was, I think, so powerful. And you particularly really took to the Kairos assessment. And I'd love you to kind of expand on that piece.
Yeah, and I think that's the good point. As far as the Kairos goes, you know, working with Frank on that, Sopper is well, and it continues to be great. I mean, that's coaching that has continued past the engagements you and I've had, Meg, and I think, just to put that aside for a second, what this whole thing was about as it integrated what you were talking about, those assessments with everybody's freedom to build their own system, was we all developed an understanding of each other. And so it wasn't like anybody was looking at, well, I do it this way, how can you not do it that way? Because it's more about, I get who you are and how you want to process and associate with different things. And so as long as you're organized and I can plug into your world and we can all get things done in a timely and thorough way, everybody just kind of calm down a little bit. I shouldn't say calm down, but it just really makes things run so much smoother when everybody understands everybody else. So that was great. And then as far as me personally, what I think about GTD and just the broad strokes of it is, you know, there's the point where, from my perspective, I kept getting layers and layers of it on my own, where I was getting deeper and deeper into it and solving my own kind of like, hey, I wonder, I'm at this level now, I wonder how I could solve that. And I could go back to the book for it. But then there was this realization that I need somebody like you to come in and say, Fred, have you thought of it this way? Or here's another nuance that you didn't necessarily think about in the same way. And you getting to know the team and how we worked and operated and what we aspired to in terms of our service standard and our what we want to bring to clients ultimately, or to the world, then you could fine tune that and really hone in on certain parts of the book for me that just gave me huge value. And then it allowed me to go even deeper with Frank and say, okay, well, how, now that I can be my true self, if this is my true self, how do I harness those strengths and those powers that I had by being totally into the GTD lower horizons and then lifting up into the higher horizons. So Frank helped with that. And then you, of course, between you two, we ended up going even to higher horizons with Marion at the time, which really was powerful, because then it's about, you know, what are we going to do as in terms of purpose in the world? And it all flows back down to those two other areas.
And for those of you who may not know Frank, Frank is the initiator of the Kairos assessment, and he's also the president of GTD, or CEO of GTD Focus. And I've known Frank since my 20s.
Wow. Yeah.
Since my mid-20s. And were there any surprises, you know, through working with all of us, you know? Was there something where you're like, wow, I didn't know that the Getting Things Done methodology, which I still think is such a misnomer in some ways, right? The book is, what were some of the, could you give, or could you elaborate a little bit on, wow, I didn't realize that the methodology was going to bring me this personally, professionally. Like yes, I know about the 6 horizons, right? I know about the 5 phases, and I know about the natural planning model and all of that. But at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the depth of it's, when you say about the, you know, those, that language of, you know, the horizons and the 5 phases, I think that's all great. That's a naming convention, so we can all talk the same way. But I think it doesn't do service to the fact that it's very, very deep, and it's specific enough you can get into motion, but it's open enough that it can become help you become who you are. It's not necessarily a paint by numbers. It's just a big enough framework that you can stay within it and do something, but big enough that you can be anything you want to be.
Mm.
And I think that's what I really enjoy about it. I don't think I'll ever be done getting better at getting out of my own way and interacting with others through that framework, because it's wide open. And that, I think that's the sign of an amazing piece of thinking. And I would say the other thing is, one of my things I strive for, and it's helped me in my family too, is I want to be present. So I've got some kids that through this whole period that we're growing up, and GTD, not surprisingly, I mean, that's what it's all about. But I am in the moment increasingly. When they were younger, at least, I could be more and more in the moment and assessing, like, why am I not in the moment when I'm with you? These are precious times. So if I'm not in the moment with you, what am I thinking about that should be off on the shelf? And GTD helped that. It's like, how do I switch hats? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I shouldn't be switching a hat. I should have this hat on today because I'm okay with everything else I'm not doing. So there was that personal piece. And of course, then when we're sitting in front of people that we want to create value for, be it a team member, a client, or what have you, I want to be totally present. And the only way I can be totally present is know in my heart and my subconscious that everything is handled that needs to be handled. And that's what this framework gives for me.
I was so excited to be able to, have this conversation with you, and looking forward to this, because you took the breath. You went all the way from, what's this piece of paper and what's this email, right? And what's that project? And then doing the higher horizons with Marion, and just going right up to, the areas of focus and goals, vision, and purpose, looking at the alignment, looking at on course, off course, looking at intention, looking at what does on course look like and what does off course, because so many people know what off course looks like, but then it's like, yeah, but what does on course look like? It's like when my clients say I'm overwhelmed, I'm like, well, what does not overwhelmed look like? And they're like, well, I don't know.
And what would you do with it if you weren't?
This is the thing that we talk about, right? Is once you do have that space,
now what?
Now what?
And that's where it gets really interesting.
So where are you? Where are you now? Where are you now with things? Since I haven't, spoken with you for a little while.
As I was listening to you talk about the different levels, we've engaged personally, like you and I have engaged it twice, and won't be the last time, because at the end of the day, there's just a continual nuance and depth that gives me more layers of freedom that you bring to it. And I think the last one I wanted to comment on was, when we engaged last time, my biggest takeaway was how to go up and down those layers when I was feeling a little bit like things weren't aligned. And it's really intriguing to me, because it's not that I'm not going to get off center. It's that, how do I get back to center? And part of it is just knowing now, which wasn't obvious to me before we had our last engagement. Was it last year? I think it was. Yeah. Yes. Last year, where I could go, and just having that confidence that, okay, it's not just that piece of paper. It could be, but it could be up here, or it could be in the middle. I just got to go find it. And then everything unravels from there. And then the freedom comes back. And I think that was the most powerful latest thing, that I'm getting back on center quicker. It's not to say I'm not off course a lot. The other day I was off course quite a bit, and I was just getting a little bit frustrated. I'm like, oh, this is as simple as what Meg tells me. I got too much on my mind, and I'm not using the system I have. So just get it off my mind, throw it in and I just did it right there on the steps. I'm just like, I'm done. And I put it all out, and it was instant. I'm like, I'm good now. And then all that higher horizon stuff was allowed to come back. It was so cool. So that's where I'm at.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Well, thank you.
Thank
you as always. Thank you so much for taking this time to just share your experience, and for others to be able to get, a glimpse of what it's like and the things that can happen in a GTD coaching relationship.
Well, and I have to say, it's one of the most gifted books I have. And as you know, anybody I hear that needs some sense of it, I send them directly to you. This process from the book through to meeting you and Frank and Marion has been one of the most important things in my life.